God is a God of restoration. No matter what has been taken, no matter what has been lost, He has the power to bring it back in full measure. Sometimes life feels like a battlefield. The enemy comes in like a thief, stealing joy, peace, finances, relationships, even time. You look back and wonder where the years went, where the opportunities disappeared, and why certain doors that should have opened remain shut. But hear me today. God is not blind to what has been taken from you. He is a restorer, and when He restores, He doesn't just bring back what was lost. He brings it back better, stronger, greater than before. The Word of God is filled with promises of restoration. In Joel 2:25, He declares, I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten. Think about that for a moment. He doesn't just restore things, He restores time. The very years that seem wasted, the seasons where you felt forgotten, the moments where pain overshadowed your purpose. God says, I will restore it. That means nothing you have gone through is beyond His power to redeem. Nothing is too broken that He cannot repair. Nothing is too lost that He cannot return. Look at the story of Job. He lost everything. His wealth, his health, his children. The enemy thought he had won. People looked at Job and saw a man defeated. But God saw a man in the making. God was setting Job up for restoration. And in the end, He gave him double for his trouble. Everything Job lost came back in greater measure. Why? Because when God restores, He doesn't just return what was stolen. He adds increase, He adds favor, He adds blessing. Some of you have walked through seasons where you felt stripped, betrayed, and broken. You've seen people walk away. You've experienced setbacks that made you question if you would ever recover. But I came to tell you, restoration is coming. What was taken will be returned. What was stolen will be restored. What was lost will be redeemed. The enemy thought he had the final say, but he forgot one thing. God always has the last word. There are people here who have been crying out, God, when, how long will I ever see restoration? And I declare to you today, yes, you will. God is not a man that He should lie. If He said He will restore, then He will. The pain of your past is no match for the power of His promise. The disappointments of yesterday will not dictate your tomorrow. Restoration is not just a possibility. It is a certainty when you walk with God. But here's what I love about God's restoration. He doesn't just give back what was stolen. He makes the enemy regret ever touching you in the first place. When He restores, He elevates. When He restores, He multiplies. When He restores, He gives you back more than what was taken. That's the kind of God we serve. So today, I challenge you. Stop weeping over what was lost and start preparing for what's coming. God is about to do something in your life that will make people wonder how you recovered so quickly. The doors that closed are about to swing wide open. The opportunities that were stolen are about to return with interest. The years that felt wasted are about to be repaid in full. Get ready, because what's coming is greater than what was lost. And when restoration comes, it won't be quiet, it will be undeniable. Those who saw you in your struggle will have no choice but to witness your comeback. Those who counted you out will have no choice but to see you rise. Because when God restores, He makes sure everybody knows He was in it all along. It's coming. Get ready. The enemy has been stealing from people since the beginning of time. He comes in like a thief, quietly, subtly, working behind the scenes to take what rightfully belongs to you. And sometimes it happens so gradually that you don't even realize what's missing until you wake up one day and feel the weight of everything you've lost. But today I need you to recognize something. God never intended for you to live in lack, in loss, or in defeat. He has already declared restoration over your life, but before you can receive it, you must first understand exactly what has been stolen. The enemy steals in different ways. Some people have had their joy stolen. One heartbreak, one betrayal, one disappointment at a time. You used to laugh, you used to dream, you used to wake up with excitement, but somewhere along the way, life drained that out of you. Others have had their peace stolen. Anxiety and worry have crept in. keeping you up at night, making you second guess yourself, filling your mind with fear about the future. Some of you have had your finances stolen. You've worked hard, you've done the right things, yet it feels like no matter how much you try, you can't seem to break free from the struggle. And then there are those who have had time stolen. Time that was wasted in the wrong relationships, the wrong opportunities, the wrong seasons. Time that you wish you could get back, because if you knew then what you know now, you would have done things differently. But hear me today. God is not just a restorer of things. He is a restorer of time. What you think is gone forever, He has the power to redeem. John 10:10 says, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly." The enemy's plan has always been to take, to rob you of what belongs to you. But God's plan is the exact opposite. He doesn't just want to give you back what was lost. He wants to give you life, and not just life, but abundant life. That means nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing lacking. That means full restoration. Some of you have been walking around unaware of how much has been taken from you. You've accepted struggle as normal. You've accepted brokenness as your portion. You've accepted loss as if it was supposed to happen that way. But today your eyes are opening. You are realizing that what has been stolen does not belong to the enemy. It belongs to you. Your joy belongs to you. Your peace belongs to you. Your finances belong to you. Your health, your relationships, your opportunities, they belong to you. And the moment you recognize that, you position yourself to receive restoration. But here's the thing. The enemy doesn't give back what he's stolen. He has to be commanded to return it. That's why Proverbs 6:31 says when the thief is caught, he must repay sevenfold. Not double, not triple, sevenfold. That means everything that was taken from you is coming back in greater measure. The joy that was stolen, it's coming back with interest. The peace that was taken, it's coming back stronger than before. The opportunities that were lost, God is about to bring new ones that are even better than what you thought you missed. So today I need you to do something. Stop accepting the theft. Stop settling for less. Stop allowing the enemy to keep what doesn't belong to him. It's time to take back what is yours. It's time to declare restoration over every area of your life. It's time to rise up and say, enough is enough. Everything that was stolen from me is coming back, and it's coming back greater than before. You're not walking out of this season empty-handed. Restoration is already in motion. Get ready, because what's been stolen is about to be returned with interest. Restoration is not just a one-time event. It's a process. And let me tell you, it's a process that often looks different than what we expect. When we think of restoration, we often picture everything returning all at once the way it was, or even better. But the truth is, God's restoration process doesn't always unfold according to our timeline or in the way we envision. Sometimes it comes in stages. Sometimes it requires patience. And sometimes it involves going through a season of preparation before we can fully step into the fullness of what God has for us. Look at the story of Joseph. His journey wasn't a straight line from loss to restoration. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. It looked like everything was being taken from him, piece by piece. Yet God was at work in every situation, setting Joseph up for a restoration that was beyond his wildest dreams. God didn't just restore Joseph to the position he had before. He elevated him to a place of influence and authority that he never could have imagined. That's what God does in His restoration process. He doesn't just bring you back to where you were. He takes you to places you never thought possible. The same is true for you. You may be in a season right now where it feels like things are moving slowly, or maybe it seems like the doors you've been waiting for aren't opening as quickly as you'd hoped. But I want you to understand that God is working behind the scenes, even when you can't see it. Sometimes restoration takes time because God is preparing you for the level of blessing and favor that's about to be poured out on your life. He's aligning people, orchestrating events, and making sure that when the time is right, everything falls into place. The key to navigating this process is trust. Trust that God is not only able to restore what was lost, but He's also able to do it in a way that is perfectly tailored to your life and your purpose. Restoration isn't just about getting back what you lost. It's about making you stronger, wiser, and more prepared for what's coming next. Think about the goldsmith who refines gold. The gold goes through a process of heating, burning, and purifying to remove all the impurities. That's not a comfortable process, but it's necessary for the gold to shine in its full glory. Similarly, the restoration process might involve some refining, but it's all part of God's perfect plan to bring you into something better. There are also times when God uses the waiting period to teach us valuable lessons. If we rush the process or try to force things to happen on our own, we miss out on the growth that's happening beneath the surface. Trust the timing of God. Don't get discouraged by delays. Remember, just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean God isn't working. In fact, some of the greatest breakthroughs happen in the waiting. Your faith is being tested and strengthened. Your character is being built. Your capacity to handle the blessings God is about to pour into your life is being expanded. I know it can be hard when things don't seem to happen as quickly as we want them to. It's easy to get frustrated when the restoration you're praying for seems to be taking longer than expected. But God's ways are not our ways, and His timing is perfect. He sees the big picture that we can't see. He knows what's ahead, and He knows exactly when to release the blessings and restoration you've been praying for. So while you're waiting, keep your heart in a posture of faith. Keep trusting, keep believing, and keep declaring that God is restoring everything that was stolen. I promise you, when the restoration comes, it will be worth the wait. God will not only restore what you lost, but will also position you for greater things than you could have ever imagined. The process might be difficult at times, but it's a process that is leading to your purpose, to your destiny. Keep walking in faith, keep trusting His plan, and know that the God who began the work in you will finish it. The restoration is in process, and it's going to be better than anything you could have imagined. When it comes to restoration, one of the most important things we need to understand is that faith and obedience are the keys that unlock the doors of God's promises. It's not enough to just know that God can restore everything that's been stolen from you. You also have to believe it with your whole heart. And you have to step out in obedience to what He asks of you. Faith without works is dead. And obedience opens the door for God to move in ways you never imagined. Look at the story of Job. Job lost everything. His wealth, his health, his family, everything. His friends came to him, and instead of comforting him, they began to question his faith, his righteousness, and even his relationship with God. It would have been so easy for Job to give in to bitterness, to let the weight of his loss convince him that God had abandoned him. But Job did something extraordinary. He kept his faith. Even when everything around him said he should give up, he said, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." Job's faith never wavered, and because of that, God restored everything he had lost and more. It wasn't just that Job believed God could restore. He obeyed God through the process. He didn't sit around and wait for restoration to just fall into his lap. He cried out to God. He repented for things he didn't even know were wrong. And he stood firm in his faith, trusting that even though he didn't understand everything, God's plan for his life was still good. In the end, God didn't just restore Job's health and wealth. He gave him double what he had before. Job's story is a powerful reminder that when we remain faithful and obedient, even in our darkest hours, God will do more than restore. He will elevate us. Faith and obedience go hand in hand. Faith is what keeps you going when it feels like all hope is lost. It's what keeps you believing that God is still working, even when you can't see it. Obedience is what keeps you aligned with God's will, even when it doesn't make sense. When God speaks to you, even in the smallest of ways, obedience is what makes the difference between staying stuck and moving forward into the restoration that God has promised. Sometimes we want restoration, but we don't want to go through the process that leads to it. We want things to be fixed instantly, but often restoration requires us to step out in obedience. Whether that's letting go of old hurts, forgiving those who've wronged us, or trusting God in areas where we've been holding back. Restoration requires us to move out of our comfort zones and trust God with what we've been holding on to for so long. It requires us to surrender our plans and our timelines and trust that God's plan is better than anything we could come up with. Remember, God's timing is perfect. He knows what you need and when you need it. When we obey His word, we open the door for Him to work on our behalf in ways that are far greater than what we could ever imagine. There are blessings waiting for you on the other side of your obedience. And sometimes those blessings are tied to things you've been holding on to that God is asking you to release. It's easy to want to rush through the waiting period to try and make things happen on your own. But trust me, when you let go of control and obey God's direction, you're positioning yourself for something bigger than you could ever plan. Just think about Abraham. God told him to leave everything he knew and go to a place he had never seen. Abraham didn't question it. He didn't hesitate. He obeyed, and as a result, he became the father of nations. Faith and obedience always go hand in hand, and when you put them together, they become a powerful force for restoration. As you stand in faith and walk in obedience, you are creating a pathway for God to do what only He can do, restore everything the enemy has taken, and give you more than you ever imagined. So keep trusting, keep walking in obedience, and watch as God moves in your life in ways that will leave you speechless. Your restoration is on the other side of your faith and obedience. The best is yet to come. One of the hardest things to do when you're in the midst of loss or struggle is to forgive. And yet forgiveness is one of the most powerful keys to restoration. You see, unforgiveness is like a weight that we carry around, whether we realize it or not. It holds us back from stepping into the fullness of what God has for us. It locks up the very blessings and breakthroughs we're crying out for. The enemy knows this, which is why he works so hard to keep us in bitterness, resentment, and anger. But I'm here to tell you today that forgiveness is not just for the person who wronged you. It's for you. When we hold on to unforgiveness, we are essentially allowing the people who hurt us to continue controlling our peace, our joy, and even our future. The enemy wants us to keep replaying the hurt, to keep nursing the wound, and to keep giving our power away. But when we forgive, we take back that power. We stop letting the past dictate our present and future. Forgiveness is the key to breaking free from the chains that keep us stuck. Jesus made it clear how important forgiveness is. In Matthew 6:14, He says, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you." He doesn't just say, forgive if you feel like it, or forgive if the person deserves it. He says, if you forgive. It's a command, not a suggestion. Why? Because God knows that forgiveness is what opens the door to our healing, our restoration, and our freedom. You may be thinking, but you don't understand what they did to me. And I get it. Some wounds run deep. Some betrayals cut to the core. Some losses are so painful that the thought of forgiving feels impossible. But let me tell you something. You're not forgiving for them. You're forgiving for you. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying what happened was okay or that it didn't matter. It means you're choosing to release the burden of carrying that hurt. It means you're giving God permission to heal the wound that has been festering. It's important to remember that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, especially when the person who hurt you hasn't repented or isn't open to change. Forgiveness is between you and God. It's about your heart, not the other person's. It's about breaking the power that hurt has over you and stepping into the freedom that God wants to give you. Sometimes you may need to forgive from a distance, especially if the relationship is toxic. But even then, forgiveness is a step toward healing. It's a decision to no longer let the past define your present. Forgiveness opens the door to restoration. When we hold on to bitterness, we're essentially blocking God's blessings from flowing into our lives. We're telling Him that we'd rather hold on to the pain and the hurt than let go and trust Him with the healing. But when we choose forgiveness, we make room for God to step in and restore what was lost. We allow Him to heal our hearts and to transform our minds. We give Him permission to replace the bitterness with peace, the hurt with joy, and the anger with love. I know it's not always easy. I know there are times when it feels like forgiveness will never come, but I'm telling you today that it's possible. With God, all things are possible, even forgiveness. And when you forgive, you are not only opening the door for God to restore your heart, but you are also opening the door for restoration in every other area of your life. Your breakthrough is tied to your ability to forgive. Your healing is tied to your ability to forgive. Your restoration is tied to your ability to forgive. So if you've been holding on to something for too long, let it go today. Release the hurt, release the anger, release the bitterness, and watch as God begins to move in your life in ways you never thought possible. It's time to forgive. It's time to release. It's time to make room for God to restore everything that was stolen. When God promises restoration, He doesn't just promise to restore what was lost. He promises to do exceedingly, abundantly, more than we can ask or think. We often think of restoration in terms of getting back what we had. But God's idea of restoration goes far beyond that. His restoration isn't just about returning things to their former state. It's about bringing you into a place where you are more equipped, more blessed, and more prepared for what lies ahead. God doesn't just want to give you back what you lost. He wants to give you more and better than what you had before. Think about the story of the prodigal son. The son took his inheritance early and squandered it, living a life of excess and rebellion. He lost everything: his wealth, his dignity, his sense of purpose. He found himself in a pit of despair, feeding pigs and longing for the scraps they were eating. But the moment he came to his senses and returned to his father didn't just welcome him back with open arms. He threw a feast. He put a robe on him, a ring on his finger, and sandals on his feet. The son didn't just get what he had lost, he received more than he could have imagined. The father didn't just restore him to his former position, he elevated him to a place of honor. And that's what God does when He restores. He doesn't just bring you back to where you were, He takes you to a place of greater blessing, greater favor, and greater purpose. You may be in a season right now where it feels like everything is falling apart, and you're just trying to hold on. You may have lost your job, your home, your health, your relationships, or your sense of hope, but I want to remind you today that God sees you and He has not forgotten you. His restoration is coming, and it will be greater than you could ever imagine. You may have been through the fire, but God is about to bring you out purified, stronger, and ready to step into a new season of favor. One of the key things to understand about God's restoration is that it's not just about you. It's about what He wants to do through you. God doesn't restore us for our own comfort. He restores us so that we can be a blessing to others. Your restoration isn't just for you to enjoy in isolation. It's so that you can be a vessel of His goodness and grace. When God restores you, He wants to use your story to encourage others who are going through similar struggles. Your breakthrough will be the catalyst for someone else's faith. Your testimony will be the light that leads others out of darkness. God is in the business of turning our mess into a message. He's in the business of turning our pain into purpose. You may have walked through seasons where it felt like you were just surviving, but God is preparing you to thrive. He's taking your scars and turning them into signs of His faithfulness. He's taking the things that once defeated you and using them to propel you into your destiny. And when you experience God's restoration, it will be undeniable. People will look at your life and wonder how you came back from the things you've been through. They'll wonder how you're standing, how you're thriving, how you're walking in peace after everything that has happened. And the answer will be simple. It's because of God's grace. It's because of His restoration. It's because He is the God who makes all things new. So don't settle for less than what God has for you. Don't allow the enemy to convince you that the best is behind you. God's restoration isn't just about bringing you back to where you were. It's about taking you to a place of greater purpose, greater joy, and greater peace. It's about bringing you into a season of blessing and favor that you've never experienced before. If you've been through loss, if you've been through pain, if you've been through struggle, know this: your restoration is coming. And when it comes, it'll be more than you can imagine. It will be more than what you lost. It will be more than you dreamed. Because God doesn't just restore. He elevates. He multiplies. He does more than you could ask, think, or imagine. Get ready for the greatest season of your life. God is about to restore everything the enemy has stolen. And He's going to do it in a way that will leave you in awe